temperatures of 8 to 12 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
This is News Talk.
Hello, you're welcome along to Sundays Off the Ball. It's Joe here. It is Manchester Derby Day on the show this afternoon. 4:30 is kick-off time at the Etihad. City against United. Full live and exclusive national radio commentary here on Off the Ball. Dave McIntyre and Stephen Reid are in situ. Before that will be It's Time for Bridge. Nathan Murphy and Stephen Kelly calling the play there. And in just a few moments' time, we'll review the Sunday papers. The text number is 53106. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. We should let you know football is already underway at Anfield. First half just done. Let's go over to Shane Pennington.
It's Liverpool 1, Fulham 0. The goal that separates the two sides came 4 minutes before the break when Fulham had a goal disallowed from Alexander Mitrovic. He headed into the net, but it was ruled out for offside. And from the resulting free kick, Alisson played it to Alexander-Arnold. He played a lovely free ball to Mo Salah to beat the offside trap, and he slotted into an empty net. Prior to that, though, Fulham had a great chance of their own and should have really been ahead when Sessegnon was played clean through on goal himself, but shot wide of the upright from 18 yards out. It's Liverpool 1, Fulham 0.
Yeah, so that's the first of 4 Premier League games today. Chelsea-Everton, our live game at 2:15, and also Manchester City against Manchester United. Arsenal at 4:30 host Wolves. Lots of GAA action across the country as well. We will keep you updated. And the fallout from Ireland's 28 points to 17 win over Argentina is, aside from the pretty disjointed performance, largely on the injury front, namely Sean O'Brien. Here's Joe Schmidt.
Yeah, Sean has broken his right arm, so he obviously won't be available for the rest of the Guinness Series. Robbie, his hamstring tightened during the warm-up. We're going to have a look at it, and we'll know more over the next few days. We're hopeful because we didn't push him, and we could have tried to see how he went on the pitch, but it was right toward the end of the warm-up, and we just felt that it would be a risk, twofold risk. One, would he do more damage? And two, it's always difficult if you've got to substitute someone 5 minutes into a test match when you have a limited number of substitutes. So Kieran Mummian just rolled his ankle a little bit. If you watch on, he does play on, and so we'd be very hopeful that he'll be fine. He might have to elevate his ankle for the next 24, 48 hours and get a bit of ice on it, but we'd be relatively confident he'll be okay.
So that's the latest. We'll be talking rugby across the show as well. Now we're turning to review the Sunday papers. The paper review is brought to you at Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. We have in studio Kieran Shannon from the Irish Examiner. Kieran, thanks a million for popping in again. Mm-hmm. And making her paper round debut, no pressure, Louise Quinn, Republic of Ireland and Arsenal. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for popping in. Mm-hmm. You're in the country as opposed to North London because there's a training camp at the moment, basically. Exactly,
yeah. We just had a training camp for the week. No game at the end of it, but just bringing us together when we have the dates available to us. You know, I think we've a lot of catch up and a lot of work to do, so he's getting us in every opportunity. So we had a nice solid week now, but we'll be getting back to it then with Arsenal. Kind of an enjoyable week where there's no stress of a game to worry about at the weekend, I suppose. Definitely was, yeah, but you know, meant a few double sessions in there though as well, which isn't pleasant when there's a storm brewing as well. But yes, it was. No, it really was. It was a great week, and you know, we've a lot of youngsters coming in now, so we've a lot of stuff to get through. But I think, you know, some of the core players and stuff we can, you know, hopefully threaten to do something for the, you know, the Euros coming up next year. But, you know, we have a good few friendly games in between there as well. So good, okay. Well, thanks for popping in. You're back to London this evening. Exactly, yeah, tonight, okay. Yeah. I'll give you the back pages firstly before we get into a few bits and pieces inside. So lots on the rugby, as you might imagine, and this from the Mail on Sunday maybe sums up the general mood. Lukewarm, obviously it's a nod to Luke McGrath, who scored as well. McGrath on mark as Ireland squeezed past Pumas in tepid tryout before the All Blacks test, is the Mail on Sunday take on things. Sun Sport have Pep Guardiola, I feel sorry for Jose. The headline suggests he just thinks Jose is a pathetic figure, but more Guardiola is talking about Jose under a bit of pressure lately for his job, and Guardiola is saying he doesn't like to see any manager in that position, but it's I feel sorry for Jose on the back page of the Sun. The Star then, Pep, world is watching, referee under pressure, so Pep
reminding the referee Anthony Taylor that the whole world will be watching today. And above that, charging on, but we need to improve. Raps Rory Best laying down the line to his teammates last night, saying they're going to need to improve. The Sunday World then, again, it's Manchester Derby leading the line here. We're better than blue, so this is Jose Mourinho telling Manchester City that Manchester United will always be a more prestigious club than Man City. Back page of the Sunday Mirror, picture here in the top of Sean O'Brien. Bad break for Sean. Really is terribly disappointing news for Sean O'Brien after the guts of a year out already, and he's worked his way back, and he'll require surgery now on a broken forearm. So picture of Sean O'Brien there, probably realising that things were not good. And Italian gob, United manager spat at by the goading Juventus fans, is also a piece here by John Richardson in the Sunday Mirror. And then front page of the Sunday Times, we have Luke McGrath flying through the air, about to score his try. Hard day's night, Ireland made to battle before beating Argentina 28 points to 17. And then I guess one of those things that you don't really want to do if you're Ireland a manager, but O'Neill defends his salary after bad year. This is with Paul Rowan. Philip Quinn's writing about it in the Mail on Sunday as well. It's across the papers. So Martin O'Neill defending his salary, widely reported to have doubled to close to 1.9 million euros, says he's more determined than ever. And he says, if you ask people at the FAI, I think they've been pretty happy, qualified for the Euros. We made money there, made money in the Euros, qualified for some playoff games as well. And he says, I don't think I have to worry too much about my wages. I think I've paid my way, says O'Neill. And Sunday Independent, again, it's a picture of Luke McGrath against Argentina last night. We'll get better. Best vows Ireland will improve as top two in world go head-to-head. And Spurs hail hero Foyth after reaction to penalty. Well, who gave away 2 penalties last week. Foyth, their 20-year-old Argentinian, but came back and played well yesterday. Got to go. So there are your back pages. I guess the rugby is kind of front and centre, as you might imagine. The general sense, if you hadn't seen the game, or if you had seen the game, from all the reports, is pretty disjointed. Neil Francis, I've not seen Ireland play this badly in a long time, is what he says. The question is, were they in energy-saving mode? He says some of their inaccuracy was pardonable, some of it was unforgivable. It wasn't the greatest game in the world last night. No, it wasn't, but it is. It's all about next week. It's just, let's get to it. So, in a way, it's the perfect way into it. I mean, second last time we played the All Blacks in the Aviva, we were underwhelming, we were beaten by Australia, but that was still between the review. No, Schmidt was just in the job at the time, but it gave him enough to work on to then go to work for the All Blacks game. So it's in almost the perfect way, win ugly. It was ugly, but they won. He talks here, Neil Francis, Marmion performed his scrum half duties reasonably, never dictated the pace of the game though. Passing wasn't crisp or accurate as it should be at this level. Says Luke McGrath was better when he came on. And then Johnny Sexton, he says, I've not seen a kicking performance as poor from Ireland's icon in a long, long time. Cross kicks lacked any real thought. Their accuracy and depth were poor. He said, Will Addison, a decent provincial player, and that is it. So Neil Francis not thrilled at what he saw. I don't think most people were. Bernard Jackman said, Ireland really struggled to impose themselves. Our discipline not at the level that we've come to expect. Said we won't have it as easy at scrum time next Saturday. And despite the Irish performance not being exceptional, the way the game unfolded will be useful in the future as we got ourselves into a difficult spot and showed the character and composure to turn the game around. Similar kind of tales right across the papers, Louise, really, on the game. Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of, there was a lot of, breakdown in the set pieces and stuff. And sure, like some of the things that people are talking about, it can be all improved, basically. It's just kind of, I think that's it. They were saving themselves, hoping maybe to not get injured. But I think when you're thinking that way, that's when these things definitely tend to happen. And it's, when you're not fully focused on the game, or if you're, already thinking to a week ahead. But yeah, I think we've definitely got to improve the line-outs as well. I think they were struggling in those, but we got, the tries from the scrum, which I think has always been the strong point. But yeah, against New Zealand, you have to be, hitting on all angles and targets there. So yeah, Dennis Walsh kind of makes the point that when it comes to Ireland, without precision, they didn't have control. Ireland kept falling into that gap. He says Schmidt demands constant execution of the bread and butter stuff. It's why they win so often. They don't dwell on being brilliant. They don't play aspirational rugby. Their mission is to get so many things right that they can't be beaten by their mistakes. So suddenly, if they start making individual mistakes, the thing can break down and look very stodgy very quickly, I think.
But it was pointed out like that, okay, there was the game against Italy last weekend, but a lot of the guys haven't been played together in a while, and it'll be a different team again. Like, it is about peaking for next weekend, so that's the one. So like, it was important psychologically to beat Argentina, like a year out from, you know, a World Cup, them having been the last team we played in a World Cup and obviously beat us. So in a way, as you said, it's fixable. Like, I mean, Eddie O'Sullivan made the point last night when Devon Toner came on, the line out did look better. He'll be starting probably next week, so it's fixable. And as I said, like, no better man than Schmidt to go to work with them this week. Yeah, no doubt. The build up to the All Blacks game is kind of ramping up already. So the All Blacks arrive in Dublin this morning, and CJ Stander's done interviews across various papers. It was interesting. He was thinking back to the game 2 years ago, not to the Chicago game, but to the 21-9 defeat at the Aviva, and he was just talking about the physicality of that game. That's what he remembers, you know. They were physical. They took Robbie out in the first 10 minutes. You could feel it in the carries and the tackles, even in the mauls. You could just feel it. This is the one, the big matchup. And he talks about Joe Schmidt going through the game and actually spotting various infringements and not believing that the referee didn't punish them. So it was interesting, CJ Stander talking about this stuff publicly. Yeah, both it. And the other thing I was quite surprised by was the last par I see in the piece he did with Peter Riley in the Times, was that especially when it gets to 60 minutes, that's when they really kick in, and we need to be in front of them there by at least 14 points at that stage, because they're going to score 2 or 3 tries out of nothing. I'm just surprised he put that in the public domain, you know. I don't know. I just think he answered honestly a question, but I'm surprised that's out there. But by the same, you know, it's a truth. Like, even as you said, in Soldier Field, like, they came back strong. We held it out because we got the last try of the game, but like, we were 15-18 up at one point, and they got it right back to within 1 before the try near the end. So it's you know, I was just surprised by that from Stander. You know that that there's sometimes private goals for a team. Some you'll go the odd time public with. I was just surprised at just a little detail like that. But as you said, like, they're as much informed by what the victory they had in 2016 as the defeat they had against the All Blacks, as they are by, you know, being encouraged by the victory they had against them in Chicago. So it's it'll be, again, a lot of it will come down to the officiating, you know, like, because the All Blacks at that time, it was extremely physical, and the referee, let's face it, was daunted by them. Yeah, there's no doubt. Peter Riley writes, "We recall the look of outrage in Joe Schmidt's face when Sam Cane stayed on the field, even though the victim of his shoulder charge into the face, Robbie Henshaw, had to be carted off." I can kind of remember that moment. So I guess they're going to have to meet fire with fire, is the other point. Yeah, exactly. Well, like, even it touches on, you know, the Hugh Farley piece is about the All Blacks. I thought it was a good, strong opinion piece in the Rugby today. Yeah, Mail on Sunday. Yeah, and basically about how the All Blacks take every advantage that they can, and we're back to the old chestnut off the Haka. Now it's one of, like, his point is that it's an unfair advantage that they have. You know, he talks about Mike Ross's book, which I interviewed him during the week. He was excellent. But he talks about how it's unfair to let them do what is essentially a war dance to rev themselves up and leave the other team standing there like a bunch of dumb tourists. You know how Ireland countered it in Chicago with the figure of 8, you know, post Foley, the passing of Axel. So it's but again, the All Blacks do take it, and it is not just for the benefit of them, as in you know, to honour their heritage. It is, as he says, it's part of the psychological warfare that they use, and I don't think rugby's going to do anything about it at this point, because it is part of the pageantry of the game. It's embedded now, but it's part of, you know, that where they will try and get an edge every way they will. Because Mike Ross also talks about loving the Haka as well. You know, he's like, I felt like a child again watching it. Yeah, here it is. I don't know if anything pre-match. I mean, the Dubs tried to walk to the hill, which obviously was ridiculed. But, you know, outside of, you know, like the famous Chicago Bulls Michael Jordan entrance, I don't know much that a team has a signature thing that is something pre-game that you're looking forward to. So, but it is an edge. And, you know, as I said, the Hugh Farley piece was very interesting. I just found, you know, he identified 4 or 5 things. We've talked about the referees, and he's back to, again, the officiating of the 2011 World Cup final. But I found him just touching on, and we're in this time of year, you know, with the autumn internationals and who gets the test matches, and how New Zealand raid the Pacific Islands for talent, and yet there's nothing symbiotic about the relationship, how they don't even have the courtesy. He's saying their reluctance to organise tests against island neighbours to compensate for this talent drain is hard to justify. Despite their proximity, the All Blacks have only played 5 tests against Fiji and none in Fiji, and 5 against Tonga, none in Tonga, and 7 against Samoa. So, like, you know, because one of the things, like, Louise is in the biggest global sport, and even just hearing her outside talk about the variety in that dressing room and just how international it is, one of the problems, like, rugby still has is it is ultimately only played properly in 10 countries, if that. And here are countries that are fighting the good fight, that have a rugby heritage, like Samoa, you know, the Fiji, and yet this is how a power on their doorstep won't even do it for the good of the game to go to these places and play in their homeland.
Yeah, the headline of Hugh Farley's piece is "Time to Stamp Out Black Ops. Rest of the world must stop indulging whims of an All Blacks team who have played by their own rules for far too long." So, as he said, he mentions the Haka. He's not a big fan of their fans. The 2011 World Cup, the bid for the 2011 World Cup he touches on, and then the final as well, one rule for the All Blacks. And his conclusion is, New Zealand are rugby royalty, easy to admire, but on a broader scale, you can claim the All Blacks juggernaut has been indulged for far too long, and knocking them off their perch at the summit of the game requires a ruthless attacking of their iconic status. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon somehow. But he's making that point. So, yeah, I guess the week will be full of build-up to Ireland against New Zealand next Saturday. Totally different theme. Louise, you wanted to talk about the Glenn Whelan piece in the Mail on Sunday?
Yeah, so this is it now. I think it's going to be Glenn Whelan's last game now. 85 caps in, and I just think, you know, I think for himself, I think he is definitely, you know, the unsung hero of the Irish team at times. Obviously, sometimes you'd want that, you know, little bit more flair, but to me, you know, I'd always put him, if I was making a team, he'd definitely be a player I'd want to put in there, you know, or that style of player where he's just the workhorse, breaking up the play, you know, being there directly in front, even as, you know, John O'Shea said in the end of the piece, you know, that he thinks Glenn probably would have scored a few more wonder goals, but, you know, he always kept him on a bit of a leash, always kept him there just directly in front of the, you know, the back two. And as a centre half, I know exactly, you know, how he feels. You need that bit of, you know, security and comfort, and, you know, just through the whole article, everyone is just singing his praises. You know, I think when he was starting to, you know, go through the academies, he was with Man City, he did, you know, have a bit of a temper on him, and you know, his name was McAngry, and, you know, trying to, you know, he'd always trying to cool it, but it seemed like he always was able to, you know, kind of control it. He'd never, you know, lash out too much, but you could see always the, you know, the passion in his play. And yeah, I just think, you know, hopefully he'll be able to kind of, you know, get the send off. You know, it's an important game for the lads. So
it's a very good piece about it. An underrated Irish sports figure. I mean, I totally concur. You were on last weekend and you were making the point about how I think, and even just again, like Louise making a living in the Premiership, like how we don't appreciate when I think RT are starting up this greatest Irish sports person. And when you think of the top sports people we have, you have to look at, when you're talking about elite sports people, basically half the sports population is football. And so for him to carve out a career and to be picked up, to have played for the amount of Irish managers that he did, and to have played particularly obviously with Stoke for as long as he did in the Premiership, you know, like that doesn't just happen. And you know, he was a maligned figure obviously in Irish punditry, and you know, it's one of the ironies, because I interviewed Dunphy 2 years ago when it was the 40th anniversary of Only a Game, and there was a reprint, and I remember putting it to him that was Whelan not the definition of the good pro that he dedicates the book to, and to him was, you know, as a so-called journeyman himself, that was the player he looked for. And, you know, Dunphy admitted that maybe he'd been overly harsh, but, you know, that there probably could have been a more creative player in that role. But I think it's for the pathway that Glenn Whelan has had, and, like, you know, it's fascinating there, like, it's a well-researched article by David in the Mail today where he talks about, you know, Brian Kerr dropping him with the under-19s. And again, yet when he got the call up, he was there within half an hour. And like we were just talking outside about the Rooney so-called testimonial against USA, and is it appropriate? But when did Whelan last play a game for the Republic? Because he's really not in the
he's been
circulation,
out of it for a
so
while
there's
now.
parallels of sorts. But it is good that he's getting the nod and that the piece nods him, because I think, again, we have no idea of how hard it is to make it and then stay in that league like he did.
He's going to get a belated but brilliant reception when he comes on. He really will. People will acknowledge what he's done. David Snade here in the Mail, the headline is, "So you think you know about Glenn Whelan, ... And what he's done is he's talked to various people. Willow Flood, who you know, is a brilliant player at Cherry Orchard, and then with him over at Man City, seemed to be his best friend. And it's funny, you know, so he's talked to John O'Shea and Tony Pulis and various people as well. Like, it is, the other striking thing is just is kind of tender or not in a moment, in a way, where they're across the landing from each other in their digs, you know, and they went halves on their £20 per month Sky Sports package as teenagers. And it's just something Willow Flood says at one point, "Willow was the one who taught me how to shave." Little things like that, you wouldn't even think they were a big deal, but they were. He looked after me. And then as time went on, we looked after each other. We were both so young leaving home. They were about 14. It's kind of a sad thing to think of these two teenagers trying to teach each other how to shave over in a dingy digs and half in their wages, or going halves in on Sky Sports, and just trying to survive in that world. It's so difficult, you know. So Willow Flood says lovely things about him. And then the other big standout quote was from Tony Pulis, who talked about signing him. And Pulis loves him. But then he says, "We tried to sign someone better every season," is what Tony Pulis says. "We always looked for an upgrade on Glenn, someone who we thought was more mobile, technically better, quicker, stronger, but every year the bugger would confound you by playing better and better and better and get his place back. He never got the hump. Don't get me wrong, he could be a miserable bugger, but he never came in and complained or looked for an easy way out. He rolled up his sleeves and got on with things." And various players talk about him being selfless on the pitch, says Danny Higginbottom. You mentioned the John O'Shea quote about dragging him back. And so it was always, I think, a misunderstanding of Whelan from afar when pundits were talking about him driving Ferraris. That doesn't seem in keeping with the Glenn Whelan.
It's all relative,
fought
isn't
his
it?
way up.
Like, you know, like that was what Eamon's early self-rationalisation, you know, form of cognitive dissonance, you know, to rationalise his own criticism of Whelan is all, well, look at the car he's driving around with. But obviously, you know, the salary of being in the Premiership is obviously different to what it was like in the 70s. So, no, it's a very good piece, and as you said, about a very, you know, a good pro. And like, you know, we were just talking about it, like Louise touched on it there, like maybe, you know, if we were to be the team we wanted to, that there maybe we could have had an upgrade, but various managers obviously couldn't find that upgrade. No, it's a really good piece about a very good player.
We're going to take a very short break. We're back with Kieran Shannon and Louise Quinn in just a second.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
News Talk and UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School are offering you a chance to win an MBA scholarship worth up to €34,500. If you're ready to take the next step in your career, simply go to newstalk.com/Smurfit for details on how you could be one step closer to joining one of the world's leading MBA courses. Win your MBA scholarship with News Talk, thanks to UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. Business imagined better together. See newstalk.com/Smurfit.
We began our search for Ireland's greatest businesswomen some months ago, and now we've got our shortlist. The Image Businesswoman of the Year award stretches across 8 categories, plus the overall Image Businesswoman of the Year. Join 800 of Ireland's key influencers on Monday, November the 19th as we announce the winners. The gala evening will include plenty of treats and surprises for all, as well as the great reveal. The Image Businesswoman of the Year awards, sponsored by Liffey Valley, BMW, Samsung, Boots, Kuhn & Nagel, Irish Life Health, Virgin Media Business and Cairn Homes. Details on image.ie.
Proudly supported by News Talk.
Your gateway from Dublin to Beijing is now open with Hainan Airlines, world-class 5-star airline and in the top 10 globally for business and cabin service. Fly from Dublin to Beijing from just €420 return with Hainan Airlines. Visit hainainairlines.com and book today. Terms and conditions apply, subject to availability.
There's only one phrase that comes to mind when you first see the all-new Lexus ES: bold elegance. The phrase perfectly captures what this luxury saloon represents. Brave design meets supreme comfort, powered by our self-charging hybrid and enhanced by cutting-edge Lexus Safety System Plus, making the ES ready for the future. You see, bold elegance. Preview the all-new ES at lexus.ie or your Lexus retailer. Lexus. Experience amazing.
Hungry for healthy meal inspiration? Well, Irish mussels are high in iron and protein, and naturally low in fat. Tasty too, especially in a spicy tomato and spinach sauce. Catch yours in store at the fish counter or in ready-to-cook packs. So go on, flex your muscles. Find recipes at boardbia.ie/fish.
I'm Alex Dunn from Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. I have just returned from Yemen, where conflict has torn the country apart. It's also decimated the health system, leaving many in urgent need of care. MSF is treating the wounded and fighting disease on both sides of the front line. But we need your help. Please make an urgent donation today. Free phone 1-800-905-509. That's 1-800-905-509. Or visit msf.ie. Thank you.
This Saturday, the 17th of November at 4:15, something magical is happening at Liffey Valley. Santa is coming to switch on the Christmas lights. It's going to be a wonderful day for the whole family with Christmas fun from 1 o'clock. With over 80 stores, it's the perfect place to start your Christmas shopping too. And with more than 20 restaurants, take some time to relax and treat yourself. Come and see Santa at Liffey Valley this Saturday at 4:15. Visit liffeyvalley.ie. It's the little things that make the difference.
Rewarding your staff this Christmas? With One for All gift cards, you can gift anything from €15 to €500 completely tax-free. Accepted in over 8,500 outlets nationwide, including Pennies, Argos, M&S, Debenhams, online with Littlewoods Ireland and many more. Order at oneforallrewards.ie and you could win a daily prize worth over €100. Terms and conditions apply. The One for All gift card is issued by GVS Prepaid Limited. GVS Prepaid Limited is authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK and regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland for conduct of business rules.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.
Well, Max, so Liverpool have gone 2-0 up. Shaqiri has scored a second. Salah with the first for Liverpool against Fulham. About 20 minutes to go in that game. We're live at Stamford Bridge for Chelsea-Everton at 2:15. And then the Manchester derby, 4:30 from the Etihad. We have Kieran Shannon and Louise Quinn here in studio. So there's a few Premier League bits and bobs that caught your eyes. I know Mendy of Manchester City sits down with Ollie Holt in the Mail on Sunday. He's a pretty interesting character, Louise. You were talking about watching the Man City documentary. He features largely in that as well. Even though he's injured for most of the year, he seems to feature quite a bit in it. And he lives up to his billing here with Ollie Holt as Fun Mendy.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was it. As soon as he got in Man City, he was injured straight away. I think there was even, a few of those stats that you see that he's maybe played 8 games in the last year or two, even at international, but he's won the league, he's won the World Cup, and, the League Cup, and he's only featured in 8 games, but by the sounds of it and by the looks of it, of seeing the Man City documentary, he is an absolute integral part of the team, no matter if he's playing or not. But I think as a player as well, he was, his strength and his speed is ridiculous, and I think he's exactly, even what Pep was saying in the documentary, he's the exact fullback that he wants. He epitomises everything. How he wants to play is just kind of that free role as the winger, you know, to obviously take on players up the wing, but also to come inside, inverted fullback. But yeah, he's, you know, he just seems like a brilliant character, and even in that, you know, he could, in the documentary, you know, Pep could see that the lads were down, and you know, but just out of nowhere, Mendy gives him a text and is just like, you know, don't worry, boss, I've got this. I've got the lads, you know, and that's just, you know, there's not many people that would say that to their manager either. You know, he's a very confident chap, and yeah, I think he'd, you know, it'd be nice to see what he's like in the dressing room, all right.
It seems a bit mad. So, I mean, he has a bit of a rap sheet already, 4 speeding offences in 13 days. That's impressive. And he obviously turned up late for treatment after the Anthony Joshua fight he was at in London. And it seems Didier Deschamps, says Ollie Holt, has warned him to take better care of himself on and off the pitch. Some worried he might be on the brink of throwing away his career at the Etihad. But he has since moved out of Manchester city centre, where the club worried he was falling into bad habits. He says of all the parking tickets he gets as well, in England when you park your car, if you look away for a second and then you look back, you have a parking ticket, which I suspect is not literally true. I would like to know how long he is going away and then coming back to find his car with a ticket. And talks as well about having a driver and trying to settle down. He's asked Kieran about the Der Spiegel reports into financial fair play. And he says, we don't speak about these, shockingly, we don't speak about these things in Der Spiegel. We speak about the penalty of Sterling, and talks about how they've just made fun of Raheem Sterling kicking the ground for the last few days. I haven't read the articles in Der Spiegel. I don't want to learn the rules of UEFA. It's not my job. My job is to eat good, sleep good, play good.
I mean,
you didn't like this piece.
Well, it's one of these things. Yeah, I had a problem with it. It's a fluff piece, right? In a week. Now it shows the conflict and contradiction of Man City, which is you can like the team and you can like the players, like Louise has spoken about, and like I would be a huge admirer of Guardiola and the way he coaches, and I loved the Barcelona project. But like you take Barcelona, you know, their mantra is we're more than a club, right? They mean something. Like the Man City project is very difficult. To me, it's just soulless. And, you know, and in the week that we're talking about, Tommy Conlon in the Sindo had a very good piece. Again, just his take on what has been now well documented, but the spotlight has to be shone on it all the more. But it's this issue that football has, you know, just again, just I thought like Tommy's just making the point that okay, there has always been cash, and top teams have often needed financial support. It's as old as he talks about Man U in the 80s. We've had Jack Walker, but Jack Walker had a connection to Blackburn. You know, he wanted his people, his community to share in something that the Man Uniteds and the Liverpools would have had forever. For ages. Then you could argue even Leicester, like you could see the outpouring there has been for that owner, the way he's tapped into the community as well as the players, and then as Tommy says, then you have on the other side here, in a fairy tale story, this divinely ordained being would lavish their miraculous fortunes upon the poor and the sick and the wretched of the earth. They would build hospitals and schools and homes. They would feed and water the world. Instead, Sheikh Mansour pays 53 million for Kyle Walker from Spurs. And it's just, you know, it's been highlighted about the way they've been dodging the UEFA's financial fair play regulations, which, how watertight were they ever anyway? And it's just, like, it's an issue for football. It doesn't have a moral compass. It doesn't have any moral leadership. I mean, I compare it. I would obviously follow the American sports a lot, particularly the NBA. You had a massive trade yesterday with Jimmy Butler going to Philadelphia 76ers, where 2 players were given up in exchange because they have a salary cap. There's an equitability about the league. They have strong leaders like David Stern was a great commissioner, Adam Silver. What is soccer had over the last 30 or 40 years? We've had Blatter, and even Platini was compromised. And so therefore something like the financial fair play was never really ever taken seriously. I mean, I'm a Nottingham Forest supporter. I think we couldn't, in 1 or 2 transfer windows, couldn't buy anyone. But like the big guns are just laughing at this. And it's like, I mean, it was obviously touched on between the Der Spiegel and then this breakaway potential league just goes against everything that sport is, because at least a Man City did have to go through to get into the top 4. the notion that there's a self-appointed league here. I mean, there's a front in the Sunday Times how there's an issue. There's going to be a meeting of the chief executives of the Premier League, and they're going to look at Man City. Does that include the 3 or 4 that are looking to go into this European Super League? It just the soul of soccer. You just wonder where it is. And as you said, you see it on the field, and you see the love that Mendy and his teammates have, and the love Guardiola has for players and for the game, and it's so pure. And then you just see all this, and it's just this, and it's, we are in the World Cup cycle now. We're into the Qatar World Cup cycle. It's real now. It's no longer abstract. It's the next World Cup, and I've been to that part of the world. I was, as you know, I would have worked with various teams before, and one of the teams reaching in All Ireland went to the Middle East, to Dubai, and I hands up, I hadn't read much about the place. I hadn't done my research, and I landed there, and all I saw was bling and no soul. It's a false economy based on slave labour, and there was a moral scrutiny, or there was a bit of spotlight onto the Qatar and the debts of the stadia that was being built. And I just think, like, between the Qatar World Cup and just like there should be a more rigorous check on who are owning these clubs. But soccer abdicated that a long time ago, both, you'd have to say, at FIFA level, UEFA level, and you'd have to say English FA, Premier League level. And so I have a problem. He seems a great kid, and as I said, I love Guardiola, and we were even talking about the Rod Little piece outside, like the way that Guardiola empowers his players and the way they play. But there's that side. But to me, it's Man City are a club. The project in recent years, it's got no soul. They've got the funk, but they don't have the soul. And it's just. You're very conflicted. I saw a piece where you can both love, you can both really admire and like watching the team, but have a problem with the club. But it's a conflict. I find the conflicting on that you can love Guardiola and what they do, but have a problem with this and the way they've just, albeit, as we said, football hasn't been very rigorous or watertight in upholding standards, but the way that they've circumvented it and cheated around it, you'd have to have an issue with it.
And even Barcelona, who, as you said, stand for something, or attest to stand for something, stamped Qatar all over their jerseys as well. After not having a sponsor for so long and holding that above every other club. The moral high ground's fairly empty at the moment, really, right across football. It seems to be the case, Also, James McLean features. I mean, it's been a week where McLean's been talked about a lot, I know, so maybe people have a certain fatigue on this, but Eamon Sweeney goes to town on the FA, basically on the back page of the Sindo. In short, he's saying that, when McLean called the certain Stoke fans cavemen, that was very harsh on cavemen. So for 7 years, he's politely had to explain his position. We've gone through the ins and outs of that ourselves, I think, but he was really irritated that the English FA launched an inquiry into his comments where, he used the C word, and that was the reason. And Sweeney felt that was the wrong thing to do, and ultimately they let him off. But the very fact they investigated his comments in the first place, he says, was an insult to the player, who points out that week in, week out for the past 7 years I get constant sectarian abuse. And he contrasts that with the coverage Matic has got. Be interested to see what reception Matic gets today. Says it was largely sympathetic all week, and Matic's situation, he says, was explained at length all week in the media without the kind of comment that McLean seems to garner. And he generally senses that McLean's situation, he's more on the end of a grow up, you stupid paddy, is how he sees it. And he says it's as though the Continental is respected because he's making a kind of intelligent, considered decision English papers don't think an Irishman is capable of. He says it's as if English people believe anti-Irish racism isn't really racism. He says whether you call it racism or bigotry or just plain prejudice, it's long been a stain on English society. And he says, Louise, I'll put this to you, when you live over there and sometimes when you meet English people over here, you encounter it in the shape of condescension, ignorance and outright bad manners. It's behind the refusal to treat James McLean fairly. How do you find being an Irish person over in England?
I think you get your the bit of slagging that they bring, and that they really don't kind of in any way understand the history between England and Ireland at all. They're not really sure why we sometimes aren't too fond of them. They're like, but what did we do? well, like, we don't get it. And it's like, you know, they're sometimes, I think, kind of ignorant to the fact about it, you know, that kind of way. But I think it's, you know, obviously overall it's, you know, it's a great place to live, and it really is, you know, a brilliant place. But I think, you know, they're in their own little bubble, I think, sometimes, and very much just into themselves, even as an English club. I think sometimes ourselves as the Irish players can get looked over, but then even sometimes, you know, we have a lot of, you know, internationals in the team as well, and, you know, there's
looked over in terms of
I think even just maybe giving the recognition when it's there, you know, like a lot of the English girls would get, you know, big recognition for getting in their national team, which is absolutely brilliant, and they deserve it all. But I think it's about trying to be, you know, that bit more, you know, equal to all the players. You know, I think they definitely like to, you know, to big up their own kind of thing. And but, you know, I think just as Irish, well, we just, you know, we get on with it.
You were saying outside, Louise, you had your own poppy situation dilemma last weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, the club had said, you know, yeah, we're going to put the poppies on the jerseys, and you know, so obviously myself and Casey were, you know, a bit kind of humming and hawing about it, and I think, you know, just in general we were, you know, maybe not going to wear them, but then at the end of the day they were like, okay, we're not going to actually put them on the jerseys, we'd rather just concentrate on the football and, like, you know, make sure everyone is wearing the same stuff. But, you know, once we got in the dressing room, there were some poppies on the jerseys, you know, apart from Casey's. You know, I'm neither here nor there. You know, you obviously see this stuff with James McLean, but then you see the rest of the lads, you know, Seamus Coleman, Shane Duffy, you know, wearing the poppy, and so, you know, there was a bit of, you know, fuss then kind of before the game, and, you know, you don't want to make a big deal out of it, but, you know, you want to be able to...
So what ended up happening? What did yourself and Katie wear in the end?
Basically then it actually just turned out that the whole team then didn't wear the poppy jersey, so they had the second jersey there without the poppy, and, you know, then on your jacket you could go out and wear the poppy, you know, just the walkout jacket. So I suppose it did, you know, I think just before the game it started just causing that bit of controversy, but, you know, thankfully then in the end, you know, the club then supported that, and, you know, and it's what the manager wanted as well. Again, he just wants us to concentrate on the football, and, you know, things you shouldn't have to
I think
about these things.
I think with Matic this is reaching a tipping point now, where if another 5 or 10 or 20 very quickly abandon the poppy, this is going to become just an absolute headache for the clubs, as opposed to what it's been for the last while, which is whichever club has James McLean, it's been a huge headache.
Huge conformity, and I was writing about it myself during the week. Like, my admiration for him on this is huge. Now, you could argue, and obviously the FA have, but Eamon's right to pull them up, that, you know, they've objected so strongly to him referring to a demographic among his own supporters being cavemen. But
it was also the language, he used the C word. Now Eamon's arguing that McLean said no C will stop me, as opposed to calling someone directly a C.
Yeah,
personally I think that's semantics. I think if you use the C word, the FA are going to investigate.
And he went out on social media, and there was no filter to it, and it was a emotive outburst, but you could see where he got to that point, because, like, I just, you know, writing the piece during the week, just researched the statement he came out when he was with Wigan, and he
the letter to Dave Whelan.
And he acknowledged, I mean, it was so, like, that emblem that there's been, you know, circulated among, was it the Fine Gael senator, like, McLean would nearly be touching, if you look at what he outlined in that, was that if it was only from you know, the two great wars, he would wear nearly a poppy, is what he was saying.
He said it, he would, yeah.
But it's what obviously happened. I mean, you know, context. Like, the guy grew up under the shadow, you know, like the Brandywell Free Dairy, and the notion that and so for him, like, it's just, where does it go? As you said, the Matic thing could really kick it off, but you're on it. Like, he still has played. Like, it could be very easy. We were just talking there, Shaqiri there, like, Klopp decided not to bother inflaming it? Like, are we at a stage where James McLean just sits that fixture out of the 46 games in the championship? But you know what? He every year he knows it's coming, and he still stands up. And it's to be, you would like sometimes if he just, but you know, like nuance, like he was with the day of Whelan, you know. But just he went on social media. But as Eamon says, like in the piece, that it's amazing that the FA. And what we're getting to here, the way that they've jumped on and investigated it, and it's something that Neil Lennon touched upon, and it's even touched upon, I didn't get into the Dermot Crowe piece, but about Travellers, is that sectarianism is a form of racism, but they seem to distinguish it, that you can have a go at someone on the basis of their nationality, but not their gender or colour, and it should be. I mean, if he was being derided for being a player of colour, then the FA would be supporting him and investigating. It's a double standard, and I think Eamon, it's a good strong piece on that, and I would echo it. You know.
It will be interesting to see where it goes over the next year or two, because it's become so compulsory. You know, like I'd say Arsenal were just thinking, please, let's not have an incident. Let's not have an incident. Yeah. Whatever happens at all costs, we don't want the hassle.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously thinking maybe that it's a red jersey, maybe might go unnoticed, that it's not there. But I think they did the right thing with us, and that's what the coach wanted.
I think all or nothing, and that's why it was the right thing. Exactly. I think where you do create an incident is if some of you guys go out wearing it, and then you and Katie don't.
Exactly.
Equally, I wonder, should McLean's team, that might be the best solution here, because it seems like the cavemen, quote unquote, are not figuring this out. I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if his team got around him and said, you know what, none of us are wearing the poppy today, and we're going to explain the reasons very calmly and rationally, and if they want to have a go at all of us, then we're together. A part of me looks at his teammates and thinks, you're really letting down a teammate here.
You'd wonder, like there would be certain dressing rooms in sports where you'd like to think you'd be able to have that kind of conversation. Like I know that, like it's a famous one, like Phil Jackson, and you'd have it with the likes of Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich, where they'd have conversations about gun control and where different people come. Like they love players coming from different backgrounds, and they have these conversations about cultural differences to then come together. Like, is that Stoke dressing room? Have they had a conversation? James, where are you coming from, man?
Yeah.
Like it could be an absolute opportunity for that team. And then, you know what, I get you. And like, let's say the captain of that team would come out. We respect what James is doing.
Yeah,
we ourselves aware.
Very little from his teammates, don't you? Like wherever he's gone, you get very little. And look, I appreciate if in the dressing room, McLean is explaining what happened in 1972, and is saying, and 6 of them were from Cregan, and that's what the army represents to me. I understand if someone else says, well, my granddad fought in the World War, I'm wearing that poppy, but there should be more. There's no dialogue. It's like McLean is sort of just thrown out there. You either handle this with either your very eloquent letter 4 years ago, or else your expletive-laden Instagram post. Neither is going to work, it seems. But maybe if it's more of his teammates came out and started saying, look, we've talked to him, we understand this, we're with him on this. And it's his choice not to wear it, it's my choice to wear it. But he's just kind of left hanging out there too often.
I'd be surprised if he hasn't brought it up with the teammates, though, the kind of person that he is. So maybe it is just something he's like, do you know what? I'm used to it, and I'm okay just to take this hit, because it's going to keep happening. It's happened for so many years. It's probably, and again, it's just going to keep happening in the future. But I think how he does, in general, present himself is admirable. Obviously, to some extent with
I don't
language
know.
and some of that stuff. But
I think don't do the Instagram post, to be honest. I know you're emotional and everything, but because the letter he wrote a couple of years ago was so brilliant and crafted, and
honestly,
he could just copy and paste that.
He got support. He got support from Whelan. Like it was a joint letter nearly.
So we'll see how it plays out. I guess it's another weekend. It'd be interesting to see the reaction Matic gets today. Will he be booed every time he touches the ball, or will it go under the radar? See, he's such a different character to McLean as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Thing, yeah. McLean will fight back a bit.
Exactly.
He's known for it.
Actually, on that theme, we should just mention it. It's well worth a read. I guess you see, older people will be so familiar with it, and maybe it'll feel like yesterday to them. But I'm not looking at you. I'm not looking at you. I didn't
Louise
look at
was
you.
only 3 back in the day.
So Windsor Park, 25 years on. Alan McLaughlin's done a few interviews actually. David Snade talked to him today. Vincent Hogan did a really good piece from him yesterday as well. Just talked about his memories of the night, and also, frankly, when he was very ill with cancer and lost a kidney, nothing from the FAI was Not thrilled about that. You can understand why.
Or even the fact that, like, I suppose the game is tied in. Has it just fallen that way, or is it nearly a nod that, you know, that the Republic are playing the North?
I mean, it seems amazing. Coincidence, 2 days out, 25-year anniversary,
like
we're playing Northern Ireland.
How are they? Like, because obviously there's not, introducing the two teams from that night because if the goal scorer from the game isn't there.
He hasn't been invited back to the game.
Hasn't been invited.
Yeah.
But which we're into another thing about just acknowledging our own, but that's another issue. But the whole, that game and painting it's obviously like, for, as you said, of us of a certain generation, it's nearly like cuttings, but it is history now. And God, it was such a dark period in our history, and obviously it was the bleakest period, and yet within within 12 months we had a ceasefire. But the one thing I think is that from Windsor '93, the dynamic that the football public, or just the general public here, sporting public, had for the Northern Ireland team completely changed. You know, that like someone like Billy Bingham, who had done a Charlton before Charlton, and getting, like, I think it's the most underestimated, or let's say undocumented and underappreciated achievement, because obviously, like, the Charlton success has been well documented in book form, documentaries, etc. But what I know, there was it Socrates film or something about the Republic or the North in '86 World Cup, playing against Socrates, was it? It was a poor enough film, but I like I've often said, I think one of the great Irish sports books that has yet to be written is about the Northern team of, let's say, the late 70s, that started winning when it used to be there, the home internationals, beating the Englands and Scotlands and Wales, and then qualifying for the '82 World Cup, beating the host nation, qualifying '84, they beat West Germany twice when Germany had been in the previous World Cup final. Like, Northern Ireland, population 1.5 million, the Troubles at its height, and you had players from both communities, the Pat Jennings and Martin O'Neills, playing along with the Jimmy Nichols and Billy Hamiltons, and a team and a movement, because that's what they nearly were, that time has nearly forgotten. And part of the reason, I think, is because Bingham was so fired up for that game to stop the Republic, because he took so personally the chance from the earlier game in Lansdowne when the Republic were 3 up before half time. The chant went around, there's only one team in Ireland. But how poisonous the atmosphere. Louise was just talking about...
But can I give people a sense of that, just because they may not fully realise? So, like, Dennis Walsh's piece opens with Andy Townsend, and I appreciate there's kids in the car. So the gist of it, of what a fan said to Townsend was, "Hey Townsend, you effing English B, I hope your mother dies of cancer," to kick off proceedings. And then the chants from the crowd were obviously fairly grim as well. And this was, as you said, a year out from a ceasefire, but also less than a month since the Shankill Road bombings. 9 people lost their lives there, including the IRA bomber, writes Dennis, and the Greysteel massacre, in which 8 people were shot dead in the Rising Sun bar, claimed by the UFF as a retaliatory strike. And so that was almost the backdrop, really. FAI had been given 400 tickets for the use of players, family members and officials. Only half were used. And Dennis talks about the Irish Times catching up with a couple of lads who snuck in and having to go behind the chip bar and kind of go, yes, we got through.
Like, I was talking to my father on the way up, and he was talking about how 2 of his drinking mates, that know them well from back in the day, Donny Healy and Tom Murray, they 2 Cork lads, just genuine salt of the earth, they actually got into Windsor that day.
Yeah, right.
I remember them talking about the fear when McLaughlin got the goal. Just your instinct when there's a goal. That's what makes football so great. And the prying eyes, and you just could not react. And it was brilliantly captured in the stage play that it spawned, a night in November. Just that reaction. Like, I've had that of being over in England and my team scoring a goal, Nottingham Forest against Man United, and the prying eyes of not when you're in a certain section. But Louise, you played against the North, even all these years on. You played them in the last round of the qualifying group.
Yeah, literally. So only this time last year now we would have played them up the north, and I can't remember exactly what area we were in, but still, even now, you know, we were basically told that our Naveen was not allowed to be played in the stadium. You know, the people that work there or anyone kind of associated with it were getting threats, you know, to either maybe their car, their house, or just themselves, you know, that if it was played, you know, they would, you know, do something. And yeah, so basically, you know, I suppose it kind of, I don't know whether it was maybe some mind games or just, you know, a loose threat that there's one guy around the corner just doing it, you know, that isn't into it. And like, actually, there may not have even been the flag up either, I don't think.
Right.
But I suppose if it was some sort of mind games anyway, it backfired on them.
And was it Windsor Park or was it somewhere else?
No, it wasn't Windsor Park. No, yeah, I can't remember exactly.
How was the atmosphere around it, the climate again? How did you feel, or was
it was, you know, it was fine. You know, I think we were actually staying about 30 minutes away, which I suppose kind of helped with that. But as you know, as you were maybe getting, you know, closer to the stadium, you could see, you know, the Union Jacks, everything, all the different flags and everything going around. So you could definitely feel and see the difference. But you know, whatever it was, it you know, backfired on them. They then weren't allowed to play their own anthem.
That's the extraordinary thing. So they just didn't play any anthems.
Which I actually if it was my home ground, that's what would annoy me.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously we're up there. You want the anthems played, but you know, we were just then, you know, playing some good trad music in the dressing room and, you know, getting ourselves hyped up. But you know, still, it was a very peculiar situation.
The makeup of the Republic of Ireland's women's senior national team. Do players from, because it's how it's expired post '93 that the nationalist community, players from the nationalist community up north would gravitate a lot of the time to play with the south. What is the makeup of your team? Would players from the north gravitate to you, or would there be northern nationalists or Catholics? Would they still predominantly play with the north?
They'd still, so we wouldn't have any northern players. We would have a few, I suppose, what you would like English players with, you know, either Irish parents or grandparents or whatever. So, but no, actually none from the north. We've a lot of, you know, Donegal girls and everything. That we have a couple that actually play in the northern league.
Oh, they play in the northern league, but they play for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be, you know, a couple of the younger girls. But yeah, in general now it'd be.
And would you know the northern girls, or would you?
Not really. Like a few of them would be in the English league, so you know we'd know a couple of them, but. Not too personally, really.
Okay.
I still think there's still always that rivalry, even though, you know, there wouldn't be too much trouble, but it's always there.
Yeah, because actually McLaughlin was saying that he received death threats as well, obviously obviously, but he received death threats after the goal, and he was taught how to check his car for bombs. So he was talking about this very solemn moment every morning where he had to go out and I guess you use a mirror of some kind, but you check under your car for a bomb, and he decided after a few months, I can't live like this. I'm just going to get in the car and whatever happens, happens.
I mean, but yet the dynamic, and it was touched upon, was it in Vincent's piece, and I remember in the Allen book came out, was it when it was the 21st anniversary 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Two goal scorers that day. Jimmy Quinn, you know, good pro, wants the North to win, you know, and scores a great goal as well. And at Swindon, he took Alan McLaughlin under his wing. You know, we're talking there about how Glenn Whelan took other guys under the wing. And because they would have been clubmates, best friends, you know, when Alan McLaughlin was a young apprentice just after being let go at United and being at Swindon, Jimmy Quinn took him into his house. So that, like, they were kindred spirits that way, obviously, you know, just on different teams. But it's just ironic that the two goal scorers that day actually would have, you know, huge regard for each other. And even when Bingham and Charlton gave the finger to Billy Bingham after the game, because I've never seen Bingham so animated.
He was revving up the crowd.
Yeah, and he played on it. I mean, you could see it was not, they were not just playing any team, and they were not just trying to stop any team. Like you saw a side to players. I remember seeing Tommy Wright right, who was playing with Forest, my team at the time, in goal, and it was really, we've got, you know, like for those 4 minutes, you saw another side, but yet, because it was Bingham's last game, Charlton actually ended up, after telling him, Billy, go, he actually presented on behalf, you know, a farewell. And you know, what was amazing about that campaign was when Ireland were playing in Malta, like that was the game that clinched previously in the 1990 World Cup qualifying campaign, how Charlton would have travelled with Bingham to scout, you know, that game, and how they had, you know, they were managers contemporaries in the first division, you know, and was it Jack was with Middlesbrough, and Bingham was also coaching in the league, and how they would have had a friendship, you know, and a certain respect, and just how heated it got. But that game, like it spawned, obviously a play, but it's hard for maybe people of this of Louise and Early to appreciate just how hostile that night was. It is one of the, like, it's right that, you know, it's like the likes of Vincent recognising Alan McLaughlin this weekend. It's just one of those seminal moments in Irish sport. And as I said, it was great for Ireland, etc., you know, the Republic getting to that World Cup. But again, I often just think how our relationship with the Northern team has never been the same. Since.
Really?
Yeah, I believe so. It was
such a poisonous night, it's had an aftertaste.
Yeah, it was to hell with them. Yeah. You know, like when they were kind of like, and it wasn't just that they were a team that were, well, we didn't have a team to support in 82, 86. Like again, as I said, I'm slightly different because I was born in Belfast. My parents are all from the north, my family. But, you know, like to me, like following the Martin O'Neill team, like what they did for Irish football, because that was what the response, that was the thing, because you know, it can be airbrushed out of history. It's nearly like, you know, Irish football being a proper international force only happened in 86.
Yeah.
It didn't, and an early Jack, because the question was, if we've got Lawrence and Brady, which the North didn't even have that calibre of player, and they're getting to World Cups, why aren't we? And it's just nearly, as I said, they're a team that's been underappreciated, and I think part of it is because there was just such a sour taste post Windsor '93. Yeah,
no doubt. Because well, Dennis touches on where the relationship is now, so manifests itself in two ways. More lately, this joint bid for the 2023 Under-21 Championship, which is a good thing, but just generally, as you've said, players coming from the north and coming down to play for Ireland. Michael O'Neill in March 2017. He was talking around the time when 3 Derryborn players declared for Ireland. One of them, Aaron McAnuff, was in the middle of an under-21 campaign. He says, I thought it was morally poor for the Republic of Ireland to do that, and I made that clear to Noel King. And he says there are examples of players switching over the years and then they don't play any games. He said it would be good if the FAI looked at it hard and said, do we genuinely think he's going to be a senior international player for us, or are we just taking him for the sake of it?
See, you know, over the last 2 months we've had a lot of talk about Declan Rice. But we're nearly the England to the Ireland in that context. We're the North are the equivalent.
Well, Brian Kerr has a typically brilliant Brian Kerr quote in the piece with Dennis Walsh. He says, we've been nice on the outside with the North, but sneaky on the other side. And we probably have, you know, we probably certainly paved the way for plenty to come down. Then again, they're not coming down because they don't want to.
Yeah, like again, like when I think again, just on that, like I remember interviewing Owen Mulligan in 2005, and the North had just beaten England 1-0, and he just remembers you know, it was just before the 05 All Ireland, and he was just talking about how, and in his pub he has Aaron Hughes' jersey, and it was a bit of bone of contention to some people, but he said, hey, there's a local boy doing good, you know. But he talked about just how they were going, you know, they were celebrating in that part of the neighbourhood in the Cookstown Dungannon area, and how he just said to them, like, fair play, but to him it was like another team. It was like, you know, an ethnic community here in Dublin going mad. Was it when Egypt qualified for the World Cup? It was nearly like, that's another team, fair play to you, but like it has nothing to do with me. You know, it's a very ambiguous relationship.
Yeah, it's complicated, all right. So we're sort of coming to the end here. We haven't got through loads of stuff. I must say, on the football front, by the way, that Sunday Independent new book coming out, The Seventh Day, has, well, they had Eamon Dunphy last week, which we were talking about, and This week it's Tony Cascarino talking to Paul Kimmage back in 1994. It's well worth checking out as well, I thought. I hadn't realised why Cascarino had gone to Marseille. Because they were down in the French second division. It was post the match fixing, the bribery, so they couldn't buy any players.
The great thing about...
And Chelsea were releasing Cascarino, so they got him on a free. So Cascarino was as shocked as anyone that the European champions were calling him up to come play for him.
I mean...
I didn't realise that was the backdrop.
Yeah, no, and what the great thing about that interview is it spawned the most important Irish sports autobiography, probably. You know, there's, like, you just can't underestimate just how seminal work that changed the genre of the football autobiography.
Kimmage with Cascarino.
Yeah.
How so?
Because just like I was actually working in the Sunday Indo at the time with Paul, and talk about doing it, just invest in everything. Like he took time off to do it, which was an unheard of. It was a side project, but that's Paul, and he just dived in because he wasn't an obvious. Like I was just touching on yesterday about how Mike Ross wasn't an obvious. You know, like Cascarino wasn't an obvious the way that, you know, obviously Roy was 2 years away from doing his, you know, a journeyman, but there was just, and he was prepared to tell the truth, to hurt himself. Like in that interview, I don't know if it's touched upon because I didn't get reading the piece today, but he talked about how Tony was meeting a woman. He talked about saying goodbye. That turned out to be, was it his second wife, you know, and about how he was prepared on that to talk about how his relationship broke up with his first wife, and about how he wasn't, let's say, the most, you know, you know, there was his infidelity that time, and as it turned out, he would finish up with his French wife as well. But he was prepared to talk about the breakdown and how and just it brought you into the dressing room in a way that a football autobiography had never done before. And still doesn't generally. It's not like it's paved the way. But I think the standard of, you know, we're in book season now, like how that changed the standard for everyone. It's gone up. Like you will still get a Wayne Rooney, Frank Lampard. Why did they bring that out? But, you know, the baseline now is so much better, you know, for the Irish sports autobiography in general, but particularly the football autobiography. It just brought it to another level. Like Niall Quinn did a great book 2 years later, but Cascarino had set the bar, and it's right, that's where you've got to go. So it's an important piece from that perspective as well. Sports people often have no interest in sports autobiographies. Do you get stuck into them, or? I have had this, it's actually more like I was never too much of a reader now, but I've gone through Niall Quinn's now, which I really liked, Andre Agassi, which I absolutely loved. Yeah, that's the one everyone mentions. Everyone mentions Agassi. That's the pinnacle now. And then I'm just going through Rory Kavanagh's. Oh yeah, right. It's actually very good. Very good, Obviously getting into, you know, Jim McGuinness and all that stuff, and then also Paul O'Connell's. I'm kind of going between those, so I'm loving an autobiography at the moment. Okay, very good, Mike Ross's is worth a look, actually. And Andy Lee's is meant to be excellent as well. I'm 3 pages in, so I can't give too big a recommendation, but everything I hear about Andy Lee's is very good this year as well. Really good. I'm the same boat. Any last piece you want to direct people towards that we haven't had a chance to talk to? We didn't touch on Gav, which would normally be the first place I go. It's a quiet enough week. Dermot Crowe, I didn't get really into it, but you know, we've been talking a lot about identity and racism. That he has a piece on the travelling community's relationship with sport. So that's where I must go back to it. And I thought Philip Lanigan, like we were just saying, it's a where do you stop on the J calendar, but he's literally talking about the calendar, and particularly the Paddy's Day slot with the club finals, that we're into provincial club finals already, and yet the it's another 4 months before we actually have the finals, how they have to look at that. So that's another piece to recommend. Okay. We touched on the Rod Little. We've all seen the piece on Viral, but it spawned that whole debate again about parents. Kids and parents. I mean, pushing your kid to save a shot was a new one on me. That was a whole level of interference. And then they still scored. I mean, that was the poetic justice, really, wasn't it? We don't have time to get into that, but parents on sidelines is a frequent issue. I'm sure you've experienced it yourself back in the day. Definitely, Kieran, thanks for coming in again. Much appreciated. Keep plugging away in the Irish Examiner. And Louise, flying back to London this evening. Best of luck for the rest of the season. And I guess lots of Ireland games more next year than this year to look out for. Yeah, exactly, The Euro qualifiers coming up September. Okay, great stuff. Thanks a million for doing it. Appreciate it. Thank you. I know it's been a busy week for you. We're taking a short break. We'll be at Stamford Bridge with Nathan Murphy next.